You talk about Barack Obama in your book. Do you think that perhaps, and I know you just mentioned that these are figures that have no chance in defeating Obama in the long run, but do you believe that perhaps Obama is in denial of the power of the extreme right at the end of the day? After all, he does put a lot of influence on bipartisanship, which we haven't really seen succeed in the last years.
Yeah, I mean, his whole campaign was about coming together. His campaign was about getting beyond the partisan divisions. This was part of his rhetoric, and now 50% of the Republican Party refuses to accept the fact that he's even an American. I mean, we've heard this parroted by leading Republicans. It began almost immediately after he was elected. That the Republicans started claiming that his health care plan was actually a plan to kill the elderly and the infirm. And we heard this from Senator Chuck Grassley, who is like the head of the Finance Committee. And this is a Republican who's been considered prestigious. Everything that Sarah Palin is saying about Barack Obama is coming from the extreme fringe of people who claim that he has no birth certificate. Michelle Bachmann, the congresswoman from Minnesota, who is considering running for president, one of the first things she did in announcing or in considering her campaign and trying to drum up support for her campaign is to produce her birth certificate in order to mock the notion that Barack Obama is even an American. So they refused to accept his legitimacy as the president. The Republicans refused to accept the legitimacy of Bill Clinton as president, and they staged a de facto coup attempt against him because he had not been forthcoming about a sexual relationship he had, which had nothing to do with his, I think, his legitimacy as president. So Barack Obama should have taken a lesson from this, but he was trying to outflank the Clintons and portray the Clintons as too partisan.
Yeah.
And what he did was ignore the whole history of race and religion and the treatment of immigrants in the United States because he represents all of that. And he believed that he could simply stand there and be allowed to govern when these people don't accept, first of all, a Democrat's right to govern. They have a dictatorial mentality. Number two, they don't accept the right of immigrants to have children in the United States who become citizens. Number three, they believe that Muslims practice the religion of Satan. And number four, these are the people who opposed civil rights in the Deep South and who continue to oppose programs like affirmative action. So Barack Obama is essentially this multicolored piñata that represents everything that the right wing hates. The right wing dominates the Republican Party, and so why should he have expected any degree of bipartisanship or cooperation with him? Right now, what he's negotiating is whether the federal government will continue to operate, because the Republicans are talking about shutting down the federal government to force budget cuts, which will basically be cuts on the backs of working people, especially minorities.
Blumenthal spent over 7 months in Israel and Palestinian-occupied territories, reporting from the region. While living in Jerusalem's Ben Yehuda Street, he came back with a series of video interviews of the people living in the neighborhood. Here are some of those interviews.
I came here with the birthright. I was here for 10 days, and it was a really amazing experience. We got to see the areas that are considered safe because, let's look around. People are getting killed for no good reason, It's like such a shame, man. I wish the hippies were here, man. These guys would burn down everything, and they would be praised for it too, like they did in the 60s,
So what did you learn on Birthright about the situation?
No, they're not negative when it comes to politics. They steer you clear from that. They're kind of shielding you from the politics.
Yeah.
We're not meant to hate anybody. You got to remember that. Jews don't want to hate anybody. Jewish people are innately happy, and they want to praise God, and they want to live in peace, but it doesn't make sense that you guys can't simply understand. If you try and hurt somebody, you want to hurt their family, you have to stop those people. If they're trying to burn down your house, you got to put water. But if they do it every day, you got to just annihilate them. I know it sounds really rough, but don't you guys see that there's somebody coming?
Well, Arabs here for thousands of years. If one looks into the history books, we'll find there were a few thousand Arabs here, a few thousand Jews, and there was nobody in the land of Israel. So it comes back all these people, and they've they're not, the Palestinian people is actually a modern invention. It's a propaganda invention.
You're from the U.S.?
Canada.
Canada? Are you like a lone soldier?
I am.
Why did you join?
That's the right thing. Help defend the Jewish people. Obligation of every Jew.
So you're defending the Jewish people?
I am doing my best.
From what?
From terror and such.
Where are you serving?
In the Kfir Brigade.
Fear, so that's only in occupied territories.
No, it's not occupied.
It's not occupied? How? I don't understand.
You explain to me why it is, I'll explain to you why it's not.
It says occupied territories on the map. They're living under military rule, under military law.
Actually, it's not.
They have a Kfir brigade coming into their villages.
Well, it says on the map, that's why it makes it occupied.
Also, they live under Israeli military rule.
Actually, they say that I spoke to Arabs, and they told me that they'd rather live under Israeli rule than under Arab rule.
Really?
Yeah.
So they'd rather have Kfir brigade policing their villages?
Yeah. It's a known fact that Hamas does these retarded stuff with their people in Gaza. And, those stuff do not happen in the West Bank. I don't know if they would.
Well, you said they'd rather have Israel ruling over them.
That is for sure. They choose to deny themselves that, but that's their problem.
So do you think you're helping the Palestinians? What's that?
Do I think I'm helping them?
Yeah.
Not directly, but in a way, yeah.
How?
You can put this on TV, by the way.
The mood in Israel is extremely right-wing, and I think it will remain that way until the country is effectively de-Zionized. And by that I mean all of their laws and policies that discriminate in favor of anyone who can prove that they have Jewish ethnicity are essentially wiped away. And what they are seeking to do inside the part of Israel that was, that it's considered legitimate, not the West Bank, is to establish a ethnically pure Jewish state. There's enormous pressure on the Palestinians inside Israel to essentially leave, and so we see that in the form of every week an anti-democratic racist law passing through the Knesset demanding loyalty oaths, banning Palestinian citizens of Israel, or meting out financial penalties to Palestinian citizens of Israel who observed the Nakba, who observed their own dispossession in 1948 publicly. A bill banning anyone or meting out financial penalties to anyone who calls for a boycott of Israel until it withdraws from settlements. Things like that are happening every day. We see it reflected in the attitudes of Israelis. Wide majority, according to the Israeli Democracy Institute, favors a strong leader like Avigdor Lieberman. Lieberman is the most popular politician in Israel, and his political platform is transferring Palestinian Israelis out of Israel, getting rid of them. Basically putting an end to the conflict without negotiating anything, which will never put an end to the conflict. Turning hundreds of thousands of people into refugees. That's his platform. It's why he's popular. And then on a local level, like where I lived in Jaffa, there are far right, and Jaffa is a suburb of Tel Aviv that was ethnically cleansed in 1948. There's one neighborhood called Ajami that still has Palestinians in it. I lived there for 2 months and witnessed the pressure on this population every day through gentrification and through now a Jews-only settlement built by illegal settlers from the West Bank in the heart of Jaffa to create ethnic friction and exploit it to push people out. And so every week there's been a far-right march in Jaffa. Mosques have been attacked there. And this community that has seen a degree of coexistence between Jews and Arabs since 1948 is sort of coming apart at the seams. And so the media tends to look at the West Bank because there's more action there, or at Gaza because, Israel's maintaining an open-air prison and makes no secret of it, which it's incredibly disturbing. But inside Israel, let's say there's a two-state solution. There's a handshake on the White House lawn. You're going to see still, even after a two-state solution, fascism continued to move into the open inside Israel, and pressure on citizens of Israel who are not Jewish just increased to the point where I think, though, there will be a breaking point.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And finally, to wrap up, the title of your book reads Republican Gomorrah, Inside the Movement That Shattered the Party. Is the movement, this party, the Republican Party, the extreme right, so to say, shattered at this point?
Yeah, I think a lot of people would say that my book subtitle has been discredited because the Republicans did so well in midterm congressional elections. Mm-hmm. They did well for really two reasons. One, Barack Obama failed to confront the Republicans in a direct way and to warn people about what was coming through Speaker John Boehner, the radical agenda, what would happen in Wisconsin and places like that. And it's because of his fear of confrontation and his nonsensical belief in bipartisanship. And the second reason is just the economy. People were upset about the economic situation, and the Tea Party was just this clever scheme to repackage the far right, which is really obsessed with cultural issues and social issues, to repackage the far right as, or reframe the discussion of the far right through an economic frame, and blame big government for everything. Make everyone forget about how George W. Bush doomed the economy, or how Clinton deregulated the economy, and how privatization is the problem. And they sort of succeeded to some degree, and they just played on people's economic frustration and got elected. But they simply cannot take power on a national level ever again unless they run a somewhat moderate candidate. This country is not going to stomach someone like Sarah Palin or Newt Gingrich or Mike Huckabee. And that's really what I'm talking about in the book, is the Republican Party as a big tent, nationally powerful party, and that party is completely shattered. So they can win in local elections in districts that are heavily gerrymandered, meaning they're heavily Republican. But even someone as weak as Barack Obama, who has about a 45% approval rating, whose health care plan is widely unpopular, can't be defeated because the Republican Party is so unacceptable. And I can go candidate by candidate and just tell you how they're going to fail, because it's just so obvious. Each of these candidates, from Huckabee to Haley Barbour to Sarah Palin to Newt Gingrich, are just considered wackos by the majority of Americans.
Mm-hmm. So much more to talk about. Unfortunately, we are out of time. Max Blumenthal, thank you very much for joining us on The Autograph. Your book, Republican Gomorrah, Inside the Movement That Shattered the Party, is in bookstores, and viewers can also order it online. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
That's all the time we have for this edition of The Autograph here on Press TV. Thank you for staying with us and watching. Remember, you can always send us your emails to theautograph@susanmadaris.com. We're always looking forward to them. Until next week in another show, goodbye.